Hi everyone, welcome along to the second video in a three-part series by Moving On Music about jazz, blues and improvisation. My name is Scott Flanigan, and in our last video we looked at the blues scale and improvisation around the blues scale. And today we're going to look at something piano specific, chords, in particular jazz chords. Now, as piano players we have a unique role in an ensemble to provide harmonic context for all the other instruments. It's fine if the bass player plays a D and the soloist plays an A, but it's really up to us to decide, is this going to be D major or D minor? And jazz players like to really push the boundaries of harmony by exploring all different kinds of chords and chordal extensions, which we're going to be looking at in this video today. So, without any further ado, let's get started. We have a lot of work to do. To begin with, let's start with a simple C major scale, because all chords and scales are related. Let's look at what that means. We all know C major. No sharps, no flats, all the white keys. I guess it's the musical equivalent of vanilla ice cream. Anyway, let's look at the degrees of the scale. We start with the root. Third, fifth, seventh. What happens if we keep going? 9th, 11th, 13th, and 15th, which is the same as the root. In this chord, I have all of the notes of the C major scale. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and C. So the chords that get created out of this are C, still C, C triad, C major 7, C major 9, C major 11, C major 13, and that's not C major 15 like you might think. It's really just C major 13, because remember, our top note is the same as the bottom note. So these are all the chords that are created in the major key from C major. Now, whenever I'm playing a jazz tune, I might not play as my C major 13 chord or wherever, because it doesn't sound great. So let's talk through typical jazz major key examples. Firstly, we start with C major triad. It's a nice basic one. Now let's add a note. Let's add the 6th, which is A, and we get C6. Next, if we add C major 7 by adding the B on the top, we get this. If we add the 9th on the top, the D, we get this, which I can't play. It's a bit of a stretch for my small hands, I'm afraid. Lastly, we might play C6-9, which we can see we have the 6th and the 9th. So this is C6-9. Let's talk minor chords now. We can do the same thing. We start with a C minor triad. Let's add the 6th. We get C minor 6. Add the 7th, C minor 7. Add the 9th, which is the D, and we'll get C minor 9, which again I can't stretch. And then let's look at the minor version of the C6-9 chord. Remember to turn the major into the minor, take the 3rd, flatten it. So we get C minor 6, 9. That is at its most basic, the major and minor chords. But in jazz, we also use a lot of dominant chords as well. And here's what they sound like. The dominant chord has the flattened 7th on the top. That's our B flat. And this chord is C7. If we add the 9th on top of that, we get C9. If we add the 11th on top of that, get C11. If we keep going up, we add the 13th, we get root 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th, 13th. And then just for the sake of completeness, I guess, root 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9th, 11th, 13th, root. So this is a really nice sounding chord. Okay, those are the 3 kinds of chords. Now we have one more before we can move on. And this one is half diminished chords. Here's what they sound like. Let's talk about them. The other way to think about the half diminished chord is a minor chord with a flattened 5th. So take C minor 7 as an example. Flattening the 5th gives us this, which is called C minor 7 flat 5, or C half diminished. It's not fully diminished, but we're not going to look at that in this video. What happens if we add the 9th? We get C minor 9 flat 5. It sounds like this. Pretty spooky, right? Let's look at C minor 11 flat 5. And C minor 13 flat 5. And then let's go all the way up to the root. So we get some pretty interesting sounds out of C minor 7 flat 5. Now, when I was going through those, especially with the 9th chords, I can't stretch that. Well, I guess, no, that's not in any way comfortable. My hands aren't designed for that kind of thing. But I really like the sound of C major 7 with the 9th, or C major 9. So we can use inversions, and we're going to do what's called rootless inversions. So really what I want is I want this chord, and I want the D on the top, but I can't stretch that. I don't need to play the root here because my left hand has it all the way down there out of shot. So I can move my thumb into here and I get this sound, which I don't know about you, I think it's a pretty nice sounding chord. So this is C major 9. And then I'm sure you all practiced your chords in different inversions. So let's try the next inversion of C major 9. So we get a very balanced chord because, thinking even back to the very first chord, I have one C out of shot in the left hand, one D, one E, one G, one B. There's one of everything. So we get a very, very balanced chord. We can also do the same with minor chord rootless inversions. Here is our C minor with the 9th that I can't stretch. Nope, not happening. But we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to take the root of the chord, move it up 1 onto the 9th, which is the D, that I can't stretch from there. And we get this sound, which is one of my favorite sounds in all of music. So much so, I'm going to play it again. Let's go through the different inversions of this. I think you'd agree they're all pretty nice sounding chords. Now, we have done major chord inversions, minor chord inversions. Let's do dominant chord inversions. Again, here is our C7. I really like the sound of that 9th on the top. It's not possible, I'm not stretching it. So same thing again, I'm going to take the root, move it up to the 9th, and here's my chord. C9 with a rootless voicing. And the inversions. finally, let's look at half diminished with ninths. These are less common, but have an interesting sound anyway. Let's have a listen. So once again, I'll move my thumb up to the ninth or the second. It's the same thing, and get this sound. Pretty spooky. I do like that sound though, and the inversions. So this is, at its most basic, a list of all the chords that I would use throughout a jazz tune. Understanding all of these chord voicings is great, and it's very useful to have them under your fingers, so it's absolutely worth practicing a load of this stuff in all 12 keys. But how do we use it? How do we effectively put this into a tune? The answer is a chord sequence. Good chords are nothing if they don't have a really good chord sequence underneath them. To begin with, let's look at C major. Again, C major scale. Now let's look at the chords formed from C major. C major, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, C. Now let's add in sevenths and hear how that sounds. Starting with C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G7, A minor 7, B diminished 7, C major 7. So that was adding in this diatonic sevenths, so the seventh from within the key of C major. Now each of these chords we give a number to. So for example, chord 1, C major 7, chord 2, D minor 7, chord 3, E minor 7, chord 4, F major 7, chord 5, G7, chord 6, A minor 7, chord 7, B diminished, half diminished. Lastly, chord 1, back to C major. Now one of the most important chord progressions in all of jazz goes like this. Chord 2, chord 5, chord 1. This is in so many jazz pieces, it's not even funny. Part of jazz education is learning to play all of these 2-5-1 progressions in different keys, and if you can do that, a lot of jazz becomes unlocked. Let's look a little bit more at these chord progressions. So we have chord 2, up to chord 5, chord 1. So that's D minor, D minor 7, chord 2, G7, chord 5, C major 7, Now, whenever I'm improvising or whenever I'm playing chords underneath somebody or in a band, I'm not always going to stick to root position chords all the time. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down these chords into the two most important notes. Let's start with D minor. Okay, quick quiz. What are the two most important notes in any chord? Go. Okay, admittedly I can't hear you, but so many people always say, oh, it must be the root and the fifth. I'm afraid it's the opposite of that. It's the third and the seventh. Why are they important? The third dictates whether it's going to be D minor or D major. The seventh dictates whether it's going to be a diatonic seventh from within the key or whether it's going to be a dominant chord and hinting at another chord. Incidentally, these are the two notes, the third and seventh, that can change for each chord. So you can have a major third and a minor third. You can have a major seventh and a minor seventh. So when we break our chords down to thirds and sevenths, this is what we get. D minor, third and seventh, F and C. G7, third and seventh, B and F. back down to chord 1, C major, E and B. Let's play that once more. D minor 7, 3rd and 7th, G7, 3rd and 7th, C major 7, 3rd and 7th. Now this movement isn't very smooth because you can see my hand is having to go all the way up there and then all the way back down. It doesn't really flow very nicely. So let's play D minor. The 3rd and 7th of G7 is F and B, which of course you knew from before. I have an F, I don't have a B, but I'm quite near one. Ah, that's much better. So this is what we get. D minor, smooth movement using one note to G7, then a very smooth movement down to C major 7. Once again, this is just 3rds and 7ths. 3rd and 7th, 7th and 3rd, 3rd and 7th of C major. So this is called a shell voicing with smooth movement. Now obviously we can play these in a minor key as well. In a minor key, chord 2 becomes a half diminished, or a minor 7th with a flattened 5th. So we get this. There's D minor 7, G7, C minor 7. Let's go back to the major one and we'll add in some of the chords from beforehand. Here is D minor. We're going to add the 5th and we're going to add the 9th to get D minor 9. Now when we went from D minor to G, we only moved one note, C, to B. Let's try that and see what that sounds like. D minor, and then down to C major 9. Let's talk about that middle chord. D minor 9, moving our one note, and here's the chord that we get. It's called G13, and here are all the notes of the chord. We have the 7th, 9th, 3rd, and the 13th up there. So this is G13. This is a very typical 13th chord voicing. You can see the interval of a major 7th with some nice crunchy notes in the middle. And so the full progression: D minor 9, G13, C major 9. So we've got chord 2 in C major, chord 5 in C major, chord 1 in C major. Again, you can see everything has been very diatonic. We haven't stepped out of C major. Now let's look at C minor. We're going to look at a minor 2-5-1 voicing this time. This is a minor 2-5-1 chord sequence with the shell voicings, or sorry, the full voicings, and smooth movement. There's our D minor 7 flattened 5th, or D half diminished. There's a nice crunchy chord there. What we have here is 7th, flattened 9th, 3rd, flattened 13th. Remember, I just need to move this one down. I'm putting the E up there, the E flat up there, because it sounds good. And remember, there is an E flat in the key of C minor. D minor 7 flat 5, G7, flat 13, flat 9, down to C minor 9. Remember, this is a 2-5-1 into a minor key, so it has to resolve to the minor key. Chord 2, half diminished, chord 5, a dominant, G7, chord 1, C minor 9. So many jazz tunes are made up of these major and minor key 2-5-1s that it's absolutely worth practicing them in all 12 keys. Well, thanks for staying along right to the very end of this video. I'm sure you'll agree there is a lot of notes in there and a lot of chords, but hopefully you'll have learned something. Jazz chords are really my favorite kind of chords because it's really an excuse to play any note over any chord and kind of get away with it as well. For anybody who's a bit of a harmony nerd like me, you'll also enjoy really just pushing the boundaries of the harmony and seeing what you can get away with. Thanks very much for tuning in. I will hopefully see you all next time when we'll be putting all of these chords to work. Thanks. Bye-bye.